Hi, I'm Osafune from the National Research Institute of Brewing. I'd like to share with you all today's presentation as per this title. This slide shows the table of contents. First, I would like to talk about how we can visualize aroma quality. Researching the relationship between aromatic components and flavor terminology is an important step in establishing a sensory evaluation system. In the fields of beer and whiskey, various aromatic components associated with flavor terminology have already been reported, and tools such as reference standards and flavor wheels have been developed. Reference standards are standardized aroma reference compounds that correspond to different terminology. We can utilize these reference standards to develop a common recognition of aromas and training in memorizing these aromas. The flavor wheel is a wheel-shaped chart of terms that was conceptualized to describe the characteristics of food products, such as aroma and taste. A flavor wheel was developed for beer in 1979, which was followed by the development of more flavor wheels for others, such as whiskey and sake. In recent years, terminology has been developed for the different types of Honkaku Shochu and Awamori, but overall, there are not enough studies that evaluate the characteristics of Honkaku Shochu and Awamori. At the National Research Institute of Brewing, we have undertaken similar pioneering research that focused on two areas. The first area of focus is to cover all the different types of Honkaku Shochu and Awamori. It used to be difficult to collectively evaluate the aroma characteristics of Honkaku Shochu and Awamori because they are mainly produced in different regions using a wide range of raw ingredients and methods. But if we can develop a flavor wheel that covers all the different types of Honkaku Shochu and Awamori, it will be possible to map out the flavor characteristics for each shochu or raw ingredient produced under specific conditions. We hope that this will set a major standard in establishing a sensory evaluation system. The second area of focus is to establish specific aromatic compounds as reference standards. As some of the reference standards utilized in our earlier research were based on specific products, such as alcoholic beverages or food products, their aroma quality may fluctuate with temperature and ripeness, like fruits. Our focus is therefore to provide stable reference standards by clarifying the relationship between flavor terminology and different compounds, and set all the references using these specific compounds. Based on these two areas of focus, we at the National Research Institute of Brewing have worked on developing a flavor wheel for all the different types of Honkaku Shochu and Awamori using the following 4 steps. I will proceed to go through them one by one. In step 1, we looked at the degree of aromatic contribution. Before I move on, I'd like to explain what a threshold value is. The dictionary defines the threshold value as this, but for aroma threshold value, it is the most minimal concentration of a substance that can be detected by human nose, which can be further divided into detection threshold value and recognition threshold value. The vertical axis of this illustration indicates the concentration of the compound. Increasing the concentration of a compound will result in a detection threshold value at which one can discern the presence of the aroma at a certain point. If we further increase the concentration, it will become a recognition threshold value at which one can recognize the characteristics of the aroma. Let's compare these threshold values, especially the detection threshold value with the content in alcoholic beverages. If the content of said compound in the alcoholic beverage is higher than the detection threshold value, the aroma can be detected or recognized and is considered to contribute to aroma quality. In this manner, we looked at the compound's degree of contribution to aroma by comparing the detection threshold value and its content. We used odor activity value, OAV, which is widely used to analyze the aroma characteristics of food products as the index of the degree of aromatic contribution. An OAV value greater than 1 would indicate that there is a contribution to quality. We also singled out the flavor terminology corresponding to each component and selected them as candidates for reference standards. In fact, we examined 32 components listed in the table here and found that 27 of them contributed to the aroma quality. We then further sorted these components with similar flavor terminology and picked out 18 components as candidate substances for reference standards. In step 2, we tried to identify the components that contribute to the roast aroma. Furfural has been reported in previous studies to be the main component contributing to the roast aroma of Honkaku Shochu. But recent studies have suggested that other components also contribute to this, such as different organoleptic properties of furfural or concentrations below the threshold value. Therefore, we attempted to identify the components that contribute to roast aroma by selecting candidate components that are considered to contribute to roast aroma using GCO technique, and check the respective OAVs of these components based on their threshold values as well as their content in Honkaku Shochu and Awamori. First of all, the results of GCO analysis on the two samples that were evaluated as roast at the Honkaku Shochu and Awamori contest revealed common findings in both samples. We then searched for compounds with roast aroma characteristics in the vicinity of the indicated retention time in past scientific reports and databases, and selected this compound called 2FM. We used 2FM as a candidate, which we have later confirmed to match with the commercial reagent in qualitative analysis. We then looked up the threshold value of 2FM and measured its content in Honkaku Shochu and Awamori, and found that its OAV was greater than 1, which confirmed its contribution to aroma quality. By category, we also found that 2FM is present in the highest content in barley shochu produced by atmospheric distillation, while the 2FM in shochu produced by vacuum distillation contributed almost none to the aroma. In step 3, we classified the compounds based on their aroma characteristics. From the pool of 18 components that were selected based on our study of their degree of aromatic contribution and 2FM, which we earlier discovered its contribution, we selected 13 components for which their threshold values, etc. have been reported in the past. In all, we selected 32 components as candidate substances for reference standards. To develop the flavor wheel, we had to group these candidate substances by their aroma characteristics and place them on the wheel. Therefore, we asked 26 panelists to undergo a classification experiment in order to determine the placement of the 32 components. In the experiment, the panelists were asked to classify samples with similar aroma quality into groups, to which we then performed cluster analysis using the degree of dissimilarity between samples as the distance. The results of the classification experiment are shown in this figure. We therefore found that the 32 candidate substances could be classified into 8 groups, each having similar aroma characteristics. In step 4, we conducted a recognition experiment on experts. We conducted a recognition experiment on external experts where they were asked to perform a sensory evaluation of Honkaku Shochu and Awamori in order to test the validity of the set concentrations of the candidate components for reference standards as well as their respective sensory attribute terms. We invited 89 panelists, all of whom had at least 3 years of experience evaluating Honkaku Shochu and Awamori to find out if they could sense the aroma as well as the terms they would use to describe it. Based on the results obtained, we organized the reference standards, changed the provision method and set concentrations, and finally singled out 30 reference standards. The final flavor wheel was developed by arranging the 8 aroma groups obtained from the classification experiment results on the inner ring of the wheel and the sensory attribute terms corresponding to the 30 reference standards on the outer ring based on the results of the recognition experiment. The flavor wheel that was created is available on our Institute's website, along with educational and training materials that summarize the characteristics and origins of the aromas. We have also created an English edition of the wheel. Please feel free to make use of it. I will move on to show you how to use this flavor wheel and its contents. If you have the Century evaluation results that utilize descriptive terms on the flavor wheel as indicators, you can chart the results to get a visual picture of the aroma quality of the product. In the Honkaku Shochu and Awamori flavor that we created this time, we have set all the reference standards that correspond to the Century attribute terms as compounds. This allows us to create a radar chart by analyzing each component and even measuring its concentration. Visualizing the aroma quality offers us two main advantages. One is in terms of product design. Reading the chart obtained will allow us to confirm the direction of products we should aim for in the future. For instance, let's say that the dotted lines in red represent the quality of the alcohol you want to make, and the blue lines represent that of the product you are currently producing. If you get a result like this, it means that you might want to consider the type of yeast you use, since you want a fruitier aroma. And since the sulfur-based aroma is higher than what you want for your next product, you may also want to consider reducing the impact of these sulfites by adjusting the fractionization method in the distillation process. On the other hand, since the roast aroma is perfect, you can tell that the heating conditions for distillation should be maintained at the current level. One of the advantages of this method is it allows us to reaffirm the procedures and steps to achieve the goal by observing the current product using objective indicators of the desired quality of alcohol. The second advantage is in terms of product marketing. Using a radar chart to visualize product characteristics allows us to directly communicate the characteristics of each alcoholic beverage to consumers. For instance, you can see that the product on the left of the chart has a very strong fruity aroma like apple and banana. This is a type of alcohol that has a strong fruit-like aroma derived from yeast, whereas the alcohol on the right, as you can see, has a moderate roast and smoky aroma, as well as a strong vanilla aroma. I would think this is along the vein of barrel-aged barley shochu products. In this way, we can visualize the aroma quality of a product in a manner that reflects the raw ingredients and production methods used, which can also be used in marketing towards consumers. This concludes my explanation about the flavor wheel for Honkaku Shochu and Awamori. Last but not least, we have also separately prepared and compiled videos and materials about the origins of the individual components that we have adopted as reference standards for your reference as well. Thank you for your attention.